there hunting migrants or chasing people down. That's absurd. And some of these radical and absurd accusations that we've harmed people on the border, or that we've even, I think irresponsibly, some local community leader said we may have killed people on the border. That's absolutely absurd. But we're an organization that stands for the rule of law and order, and are pro-law enforcement, pro-security. It'd be pretty hypocritical of us to go to the border and take the law in our own hands, would we not? Because that's not who we are as a nation. It's about a failure of government. So what has us so concerned then? Because remember, most of the people, as you'll hear, are just coming to work. Yeah, most of them are. And most of the people entering this country illegally from nations around the world only want economic opportunity. The problem is that it's bred crime. And it's now become a criminal industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry in smuggling drugs. And now the drug dealers realize they can smuggle human beings and become modern-day slave traders. And they can engage in the sex industry and force women into prostitution. And they're making egregious profits. What has us so concerned? Environmentalists and many of the people who live along the border are fed up with the environmental destruction of our national parks, our national forests, and private property along the border. Something that attracts immigrants to this country. The privilege of being a private property owner, which is rarely given to anyone in any other nation state around the world. The drugs are out of control. Now, a lot of people, I'm not saying people that are here, but there are forces in this country. A lot of people are very concerned about securing the border because their profits are going to be cut off, their livelihood will be cut off, and a lot of people, frankly, are afraid of the cost of their drugs going up. And the desert. How can this nation and we as people and citizens of the United States allow hundreds of people to die on our U.S. soil every year and die a horrible death? And how do we allow them to be led into the desert and forced into that desert, not by the U.S. Border Patrol, not by the U.S. government, not by citizens. They're forced into that desert by their governments not providing opportunity. So what's the problem? The problem, I'm going to focus on it. I predicated this earlier. The majority of people that come across the border are good, hard-working people, family members. They believe, and most of them are darn good conservatives. They believe in conservative values. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, family values, duty. But what we have is a nation with penitentiaries, prisons, and jail cells filled with enough citizens alone to allow the violent criminals that are coming into this country and to allow that they're coming right along with the well-intended migrant worker. Okay? We have enough domestic crime of our own. Why are we leaving our doors wide open to further criminals? Criminals who will further their activities, bring a weak society because we don't enforce our laws, we don't secure our borders. And these folks aren't coming across the border to do jobs Americans won't do. These criminals are coming across doing the crimes that we allow them to do. Proliferation of gangs in our communities is outrageous. Case in point, this is from April 25th, and I'm giving you some updated accounts. And if you do a LexisNexis search, and go back and look at, do search words like foreign nationals and crime, and you'll see that 23 to 27% of incarcerated criminals in our prison systems in this country are foreign nationals who entered this country illegally. That's 27% less crime we would have if we just secured our borders. So let's focus on crime for a minute. I talked about the sex trafficking. It is repugnant that we have leaders in Washington, D.C. that allow women to be brought across our border, separated from groups of migrants, brutally gang raped in the desert, and were then forced into a life of prostitution or in the sex slave industry in this country. That is taking place every day along our borders. I have two stories coming up here just in the last 2 weeks In Arizona alone, of women from Guatemala and Mexico who were separated from their groups of migrants, brutally gang raped and left to die in the desert. How can we let that happen? We have a moral obligation as a nation to stop that. And I can tell you I get emotional because I've rescued those women. I have provided aid and water and comfort. And most of the volunteers of the Minutemen on the border have done the same thing. They're not there targeting people coming across the border. They're exercising their civic duty to provide humanitarian aid while all the while exposing to you and to this country that our leaders have let us down. Sex traffickers prey on young women who are brought into the United States far from home and unaware of the U.S. legal system or their rights to be free from this involuntary servitude. And that's what we have going on when we allow illegal immigration. Servitude, indentured servitude, which is just barely a step away from slavery when we don't provide them protection and justice. When you come legally, you're afforded those. But now we have people that rationalize and justify the fact that we're going to, you know what, it's better than where they came from. It's okay if they don't have any protection under the laws. It's okay if they have to live in the shadows. At least it's better than where they came from. That is wrong. Any immigrant who enters this country should be provided the same rights and protections that the U.S. citizens enjoy. Hundreds of illegal immigrants recently, on April 23rd, rioted. These were 900 of the hardcore criminal gang members who were rounded up from countries and were being processed for deportation. And they took great exception to the fact that we didn't want them here anymore, and then we were going to send them back to their countries of origin, and they rioted, petitioning for redressing their grievances, I guess, for not being allowed to continue their life of crime in the United States. These are documented facts, these are documented stories from the mainstream media. We can put in credibility in them sometimes. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't. Then as taxpayers, we have a situation where many of these unsuspecting folks that are coming into the country are stuffed into pickup trucks and vans and raced through the desert or on our roads in rural areas, causing a public safety threat, and end up costing lives, and end up costing the taxpayers of the United States a huge burden. And I don't know if you have any idea how much it costs to airback someone to a trauma center. It's about $100,000 a pop. And that's where these folks are going. These folks in this accident, which was in April, were all airbacked to the Tucson Trauma Center. It cost them $100,000 each. Now, everyone deserves medical care. But again, if we had secured borders, people would not be forced into that situation, and the taxpayers would be picking up the tab. Speaking of health care, I wonder how many folks here are enjoying our universal health care system right now. No one? I kind of find it puzzling that Obama and Clinton and McCain and others are all talking about a comprehensive, universal health care plan in this country when we already have it. I'm surprised you're not benefiting from it. Oh, wait, I forgot. It's not for us. It's not for the U.S. citizen. It's for those who show contempt for our laws and broke into this country, who gave no questions asked, no bills to pay, universal health care system. And health care is the best on the face of the earth. Not a penny to pay, no questions asked. It's only for those who broke it into our country. And you're paying for it as taxpayers. Your parents are paying for it, your grandparents pay for it, soon you're going to go out in the world, as soon as you have a job and see how much money's taken out of your paycheck, you're going to realize that you're paying for it too. These human smuggling endeavors basically controlled by the most vicious criminal syndicate and criminal cartels that this world's ever seen. And what's happening in Mexico, and what's happening with the drug cartels, who systematically absorbed all of the human smuggling operations after September 11th. That's why you're seeing more deaths in the desert. That's why you see more women exploited and more people being abused. Well, they're turning on each other now because there's huge profits to make from smuggling human beings, basically being slave traders. Okay? They're turning on each other. They're hijacking loads of immigrants, illegal immigrants from each other in our deserts, and even blatantly, brazenly on the streets of Phoenix. We've had 17 armed, basically kidnappings from one smuggling operation, kidnapping groups of other smuggling operations, and they go after each other. They burn each other to death. They commit heinous crimes against each other because, after all, there's a lot of profit to make.